Welcome to another edition of the Wolfpacker Show. You're getting two of them this week, so that's exciting development. I'm Matt Carter. We'll be joined here shortly by Ethan McDowell. We're going to talk a lot of NC State football recruiting because it has been really active. I've kind of been about as active as I can remember it for a spring for NC State football recruiting. So we've got a lot to talk about. So I'm going to really rush through these housekeeping options real quick and try to get them in under 2 minutes. A new deal come out. So listen, it's been crazy with all these football recruits coming to visit. There are 2 basketball transfers in Raleigh as we are recording this Thursday, April 6th. There's another decision in basketball on the transfer portal coming Sunday. You got spring game coverage, silly season basketball, camp season coming up real soon in football. And right now you can get all of 4 months premium information for just $10. That's a new deal announced by On3. So take it. If you haven't already joined the website, take it because there's going to be a lot of updates and a lot of stuff coming over the next 4 months. This is kind of when recruiting, really the height of the recruiting calendar year almost now, when it crosses over both basketball and football like this. So take advantage of that. We'll be promoting that deal as well on Twitter. So that's a good chance for me to remind you to follow us on Twitter at The Wolfpacker. You can follow us on YouTube at The Wolfpacker. Please help us there. Follow us and get us over 2,000 followers. We're also on Facebook, The Wolfpacker. So you can catch the theme of all of that. You can also rate and review these podcasts wherever you listen to them, Spotify, Google, Apple, wherever, get them. Leave some comments on YouTube. That helps us out as well. And then last but not least, please check out our sponsor, rogueshop.com. R-O-G as in girl, U-E-S-H-I-P. S-H-O-P, I'm sorry. I don't know how to spell. ROGUESHOP.com. They have all your natural cannabis needs and wants and products. Completely legal, completely safe. Can help you if you have anxiety issues, maybe some chronic pain issues, or you're suffering from sleep deprivation, and you have tried other items, other procedures, or whatever to help out, and they're just not working. Why not give these a try? These are a small company, husband and wife outfit. The husband's a former disabled veteran who uses these products to help deal with some of the issues he had, and it has really helped him out. And so he's a firm believer in what he's selling, and they're a firm believer in delivering to the customers. They're on our message board if you have questions. They are also have a live chat feature on their website where a real, actual live human being, it's not an AI on the other side of it, answering your questions. So give them a check out. They're big supporters at thewolfpacker.com. We really appreciate them, so give them a check. All right, got all that out of there. Ethan McDowell, you have been, I feel like every time I turn around, you're talking to some football recruit or checking with sources. It has been like a revolving door this spring of visit days, big visit days. We're going to hit on some of the highlights, but first, not sure we had a podcast dedicated to football recruiting since signing day, and I wanted to catch up on the 4 commitments because NC State did get one this week from a player that you and I both saw live in action. Mm-hmm. Charlotte Providence Day School safety Brody Barnhart. He's the most recent, and then we'll work our way back. Your impression, you covered Brody Barnhart's recruitment. This is a young man who was a legitimate consensus Power 5 prospect. I have always rated them into 4 different categories in my career. If you're a consensus Power 5 prospect, that means you can take all 5 of your official visits to a Power 5 program. And definitely Barnhart fit the mold. If you're a fringe Power 5, that means you kind of got maybe 2 or 3 Power 5 offers and some mid-major offers. If you're a mid-major, that means all your offers are mid-majors, unless you have 1 Power 5. And then I still call you a mid-major at that point. Then you have what I call the evals, the guys or early commits, guys who only offer away the school they pick. Uh, you've seen Brody Barnhart and asked him. You've talked to him quite a bit. What's your impression of Brody and the pickup for NC State?
So he picked up an offer from NC State last June. I saw him for the first time in person about a month later at one of Providence Days practices, and it's pretty limited practice. It was early in their summer training, but I sat down with the head coach at Providence Day, Chad Greer, and talked to him, and he was just effusive in his praise of Barnhart, and made me excited because it's just sounded like someone who would be a perfect fit at NC State. Just in the way the physicality he plays with, the willingness to hit, and he's got legit speed too. I was sitting in that room talking to him about it. I was like, man, why doesn't this dude have 30 something offers?
Yeah.
And then as soon as that happened, started to snowball a little bit, started to pick up more interest, became a guy UNC was really going after, became a guy that Wisconsin got involved with at one point, West Virginia, Virginia Tech both really wanted him. But NC State crushed his recruitment. They prioritized him early. They were consistent. That's something that was a big part of it. They were just consistent. Whether it was everyone from cornerbacks coach Brian Mitchell to Joe DeForce was his primary recruiter, Tony Gibson, and even Dave Doran were just all involved, all happy to reach out and frequently be in contact with him. And that got NC State into his final group. And then, when we saw him live, that Providence Day squad is stacked. Mm-hmm. There's 4 and 5 star recruits up and down that roster. But the game we saw him, Brody was probably like the second or third best player we saw, if not even higher on that list. He was outstanding in that game on both sides of the ball and special teams. I think he had a punt return for a touchdown that game, in addition to playing a little bit of receiver and then delivering a few really hard hits at out of the safety position. So I was super high on him. I was waiting for some other schools to come in, maybe expand his offer list, and that kind of happened with Wisconsin. But again, NC State was consistent, and I kind of went in more in-depth on what separated NC State from his decision on thewolfpacker.com, if you guys want to check out my full interview with Brody there. But I'm a huge fan of his. I think he was a top priority for this staff during the 24 cycle, and it's great to get him in the class early.
Yep. You're right. He does return. I think to me, the athleticism and the physicality is what stand out. He's not the biggest safety in the world, but we've seen over the years from NC State, they don't need the biggest safeties in the world to be successful. If you were to talk about the most successful safeties at NC State under Dave Doran, I think the guys that would come to mind are Sean Boone and Tanner Ingle. They were both 5'10", 5'11" in that range. Ingle may have been even shorter than that. Barnhart probably 5'11", 170 is what they have him listed at least in the On3 database. But he's an excellent kick returner. He's a playmaker. Mm-hmm. So he's got athleticism. Because the reason I say that is Providence Day has athletes all over the field. They got two receivers who are going to be playing in a Power 5 conference and can really pick their school if they wanted to. They couldn't pick any school they want, but they would have their choice.
Just about.
Yeah, just as close as you could. And Barnhart's the guy they chose to have return and punch and kickoff. And his return numbers are very impressive. Let's work our way back because there's another young man you've actually seen in person. You're probably the only one on the beat that has seen him in person. At least, in some kind of competitive setting. Not in the game setting, but you went and saw him in a 7-on-7. That's Assad Brown, who from the Tidewater region in Virginia. He's going to be playing at a new school, I believe, up in Northern Virginia.
Mm-hmm.
For his senior season next year. But, that was kind of one you telegraphed. He came and visited early in the spring, and from that moment on, if you remember at the Wolfpacker.com, you were kind of hyping up NC State chances with Assad as they really seemed to surge at that point with him. He's another one I put on my commitment analysis for him. You have to go to page 2 on his database page to get all his offers. A huge offer list. You're impressed. You saw him in person. You've had a chance to talk to him a few times. I know you talked to some other people that have coached him and know him. You're impressing him. He's a corner, for those who don't know. Although he may be recruited as a nickel. at
He'll
NC?
be playing nickel at
Yeah,
NC State.
yeah. What's your impressions? Haven't seen him in person.
I was impressed with him in person. For those of you who don't know, before this, I used to cover recruiting in Virginia around the time he was a freshman coming into Oscar Smith High School, which is a powerhouse in the state of Virginia. And at the time, there were a bunch of I kept getting told like, "Hey, this is Sod Brown kid. Like he's the next big guy coming out of the Tidewater region." And sure enough, that happened. He blew up his sophomore and junior year. Got offers from Clemson, Florida State, Michigan, pretty much every big program you can think of. And again, this is another one where NC State's kind of consistency kind of won out here. But once he committed, I was able to go up and see him compete in a 7-on-7 tournament. And one thing I was pleasantly surprised by is he's a big defensive back. He's not necessarily the tallest one, but he's legit 6'6" or taller, in my opinion. Right. And he's a big guy. He's not he's muscular. He looks like he's a college-ready defensive back, to be honest. And that makes sense considering he trains with some of the best trainers out in Virginia Beach. He played for a powerhouse in Oscar Smith that routinely has Power 5, 4 or 5-star recruits. And he played really aggressive, like on the ball, which is really impressive press coverage. Is I think the main thing I was impressed by. And then the few opportunities that he was able to drop into zone coverage and then his side of the field got targeted. His closing speed also really impressed me. So it's a solid combination of size and speed that I think and physicality I think is exactly what you want in a nickel position at NC State. So and the right mentality too. You can tell he has a chip on his shoulder and he wants to prove something. And I always like defensive backs, especially who come in with that type of mindset.
You have to have a swagger if you want to play defensive back at the Power 5 level because there's no you're going to be beat. Every defensive back at the Power 5 level gets beat at some point, pretty much every game. So you have to have that swagger to shake that off and believe, you got me this time, but I'm going to get you the next time or the time after that.
So kind of going off of that, yeah, I saw him play 3 7-on-7 games. They're about half an hour each. So I'd say probably 4 or 5 series per game for Assad. And I only saw him get beat twice. And one of them was because he tripped. Yeah. So, and then, the next play, he was right back in on it, and it clearly didn't phase him. He wasn't getting too high or too low. He had a couple nice defended passes. He had an interception, and he was very even keeled. And I really liked that too. Just kind of just going out there and handling his business, and just overall impressive day from him.
Let's talk about the quarterback is always going to be kind of a headliner in every recruiting class. NC State found their quarterback. I think that one of the questions is who would be the quarterback after Robert Anae comes in, because Tim Beck had his recruiting board, and it was kind of narrowed down to a few names. Then Robert Anae comes in, you start seeing some offers come out. I almost feel like when Cedric Bailey Jr. from powerhouse Chaminade Madonna Prep down in South Florida, kind of the Fort Lauderdale area, it kind of quickly developed, I almost feel like. I honestly would look, I forget his name. Ethan will probably remember it in a second, but the young man in Alabama.
Jared Hollins?
Yeah. I was kind of thinking that might be the guy for NC State. They jumped on him early. They hadn't quite yet amped up his recruitment. But they made it work with Cedric Bailey real quick. He had some pretty good offers. Florida State, Texas A&M really stand out on his offer list. He's from On3 Director of Scouting, Charles Power, told me he's a legit 6'6". So that's not an exaggeration in the database when you see him at 6'6". He's won a couple of state titles with Chaminade Madonna. You're impressed in pulling that out. I mean, we haven't seen him play. The film looks great, obviously. He's got some pretty good receivers he's throwing to, so you don't know how much that influenced how he looks. But to me, it's very impressive that NC State went down to South Florida and got one of the better quarterbacks who had some pretty good Power 5 offers on the table.
Yeah. So when you're looking at quarterback recruiting, right, you have to evaluate it in a completely different way because the cycle is almost completely shifted. Like it's moved up by almost like 3 months, I would say, where these quarterback recruitments move fast. And I'd say considering NC State lost their quarterbacks coach, completely redid their board basically, this was maybe the best case scenario. You bring in a high three star, like borderline 4-star quarterback, and who has awesome offers, and he plays for one of the. I think their high school team went to the national championship this year, or was at least like right there for it. So I'm a huge fan of his. Just I haven't been able to see him play live, obviously, but his highlights are impressive. The size is impressive. He plays for maybe the best 7-on-7 team in the country too. So he has the connection, and he's trained with a ton of like the best receivers in Florida. He played on the same 7-on-7 team as NC State signee Damon Fagan actually. So it's a stacked roster over there, and you know, one thing that I've discussed in depth on the website, wolfpacker.com, for all of you who haven't read it, but his prestige as a highly ranked quarterback playing for a highly ranked program, that carries weight with other members of the class. And having a quarterback who's excited to recruit, you can tell. I already know he's reached out to a couple key prospects, which I have also shared on the site. And I think his commitment could be massive. I think it significantly raised the ceiling of the 2024 recruiting class for NC State.
Yep, and we've already, and you know what? That's important. We're not going to spill the beans too much, but look, it's no secret NC State needs wide receivers in this class. It also happened to time up extremely well because this is an exceptional group of wide receivers in the state of North Carolina. There are also some wide receivers they one in particular that used to live in the state of North Carolina that is a top target for NC State. And here, if you go to the wolfpacker.com, there is a story on this young man right now. And I think the quote is, give me a second. Quoting the headline, it's definitely a top 5 school for NC State. NC State is definitely a top 5 school for this young man. And so you have a quarterback with the credentials and the apparent, as you mentioned a few times, he apparently has the charisma and that leadership, that draw that people who meet him want to play with him and want to play for him. And NC State's only signed a couple of high school receivers in the last 2 classes. You had Terrell Timmons in the class of 22. You had Kevin Concepcion and maybe Javante Vereen, who I guess is now going by Juice Vereen, in the class of 23. Excuse me. Vereen could be a tight end as well. So I think NC State probably needs about 3 receivers in the class minimum, and that's where getting a guy like Bailey, I think, to your point, could really help out because that's a priority position for NC State.
Absolutely. And those receivers, I mean, like you said, it's the best receiver year in North Carolina since I don't even know when. I think it's like 5 or 6 of the top 20 are wide receivers this year. NC State's involved in the recruitments of like 4 or 5 of them. So it's going to be exciting. We're going to see how that class pans out.
Real quick, we can't forget the young man who was first to get the ball rolling, and that was way back in October last year, Cannon Lewis. He's the one that, Bailey had as a contentious Power 5 kid. Certainly Assad Brown is, Brody Barnhart is. Cannon Lewis is an eval guy, right? He's the guy that went to camp from the state of West Virginia, Huntington, West Virginia. Tony Gibson's old stomping grounds. Tony Gibson loved him at camp. I tell you, the film looks really good. West Virginia is not traditionally a must-stop for recruiters. You really got to have a connection to that state to really be going into that state to recruit. But I just have a sneaky feeling Cannon Lewis is going to be one of those guys we're going to look back on and say, man, NC State was pretty smart to go after him.
I mean, first of all, at this point, any linebacker that Tony Gibson evaluates and likes, you kind of have to give the benefit of the doubt at this point, especially so early. Cannon Lewis picked up that camp offer, and he came back once, I believe, after that for the Alpha Wolf showcase. I can't remember if he made it up to a game day before committing or not. But either way, he had seen enough. He shut things down, and NC State was his only Power 5 offer at that point in time. But I can say for certain that there were other schools involved. I know Kentucky and Cincinnati were both talking to him. And so he would have had more offers down the road. And it was great for NC State to kind of wrap his recruitment up quickly. He's a guy that's really versatile, can play a few different positions. And and he's someone that with those early commits, you always want to kind of keep an eye out on him, see because especially in these days, like flips are happening more often than ever. And the conversations I've had with Cannon, as long as Tony Gibson is in Raleigh, I think Cannon will be as well. I think his commitment is entirely solid. And he's very enthusiastic about joining the pack.
Let's get into some of these uncommitted players. Big picture wise, we're going to get in more specific here shortly. We're not going to try to give away too much because we want you to subscribe to our website. So we're not giving you away all our information. Hope people understand. But we're going to give away some good stuff here. But big picture wise, how impressed are you with where NC State? Currently, they're 34th nationally with only 4 commits, should be noted. Based on what NC State has already gotten, the feedback you've gotten from the kid, what NC State has been able to bring in for visit standpoints, feedback you've gotten from those, and the way the board is shaken out, how do you feel about where NC State sits right now in the class of 2024? Understanding that recruiting is exceptionally fluid, and how you look on April 6th is not how you're going to look on July 30th.
So you're right. It's incredibly fluid. And to that point, when we came out of the February dead period, I thought things were pretty up in the air. There were only a couple guys where I was like, I could see them joining the class in the spring. I saw a future where it was potential that NC State only went into the summer with like 3 commits. And I think they've just crushed it the past couple months. They've gotten their guys on campus 2 or 3 times. A guy like like an Alex Taylor, who originally went through part of the spring. He didn't really have an NC State visit planned. Suddenly he's on campus for a weekday visit. He might be returning some point soon. You can go check out the wolfpacker.com for more info on that. The receivers are all coming through. I'll go ahead here. Here's an insider nugget. Jordan Shipp's going to be on campus this weekend for 2 days. That's huge, especially with the momentum that his teammate Brody Barnhart just made by committing. And that kind of offsets the other momentum with his teammate Jaden Davis, who just committed to Michigan, who's also a major contender in Jordan Shipp's recruitment. And you need to add a couple receivers, and they're doing everything they can. They made a big move with one of their receiver targets over the weekend, and to the point where I consider NC State the favorite there. To find out who that is, go check out the website. I'm not going to spoil that. But really exciting stuff there. Offensive line, we're starting to learn a little bit more. Robbie Martin just visited. He's tweeted out that he plans on returning for an official visit. He's another West Virginia guy, which is funny. If you go look at the rankings, NC State could pull in the number 1 and 2 guy from West Virginia this year if Robbie joined the class. And it's all coming together quite nicely. This spring game, there's 4 or 5 4-star recruits coming by. A couple commits will be there, and could be another really, really big weekend in Raleigh.
Yeah, unfortunately, you kind of weather forecast has not been cooperating. It seems like each version of the forecast, you're kind of wire all weekend. You got so much going on this weekend. I'm looking at it now. They're calling for over an inch of rain on Saturday, and the percentage of rain at 1 p.m., according to weatherunderground.com, is a robust 95% chance. So that's basically their way of saying we can't say it's 100% because nothing's 100% in weather, but this is as close as you're going to get to heavy rain. It'll be interesting to see what impact that had. Did that dampen the mood a little bit from the visits? You know, they got a lot to show and a lot to do.
I will say that I do know I was talking to folks from the Pack of Wolves collective yesterday, and I know they're opening up the Close King indoor practice facility for tailgates. So if nothing else, maybe the recruits will be able to hang out in there.
Yeah.
If nothing else.
Yeah. What position group? I'm going to throw mine out there, and then I want your opinion. You can tell me if I'm an idiot or if I'm on track. And if I'm on track, that'll be one of the few times I'm not called an idiot in my life. But the position group I feel like has really come together from start to now, from start to present day, is the defensive backs. And I think you already got Assad Brown, a guy who probably had 20 Power 5 offers, if not more. You just picked up Brody Barnhart, who's been one of your top safety targets since before his junior season, and who had probably about 10 Power 5 offers. A major target for North Carolina, your chief in-state rival. Wisconsin, I know Virginia Tech was heavily in there as well, and at one point West Virginia was one of his top schools. And then you probably got, we do a who's next to commit after every commitment. And I think 2 of the 5 that we list were defensive backs. And then you got other guys. You got guys like that are not on that who's next to commit, but you could easily see NC State being in a good position with, like maybe the safety from Charlotte Independent, Quentin Reddish. You got Adrian Wilson's son, former Pac legend Adrian Wilson, turned NFL All-Star Pro Bowler Adrian Wilson, who is now moving from Arizona to Charlotte after he took a job with the Carolina Panthers. His son, Santana Wilson, is a high-level defensive back recruit. And none of those guys on that list of 5 I talked about who's next to commit. So right off the bat, you got at least 5 defensive backs that you feel like NC State's in a good spot with. All of them well-regarded. All of them with healthy offer list. And they already got 2 players committed who also were well-regarded with healthy offer list. Am I right to think that defensive back recruiting board has been so far the best developed for the Wolfpack?
Absolutely. And it's kind of becoming a trend almost, because last year you saw them bring in a stacked defensive back class where you had 4-star guys and Brandon Cisse and Damon Fagan and borderline 4-star guy like Zach Myers too. So I think it's just a very, very positive trend right now for that. And you have 3 defensive back coaches in Joe DeForest, Brian Mitchell, and Freddie Autry-Lindsay, who just clearly enjoy like putting in the work on the recruiting trail and building those relationships. And it's turning into commits, and it's turning into some of the best guys in the country strongly considering NC State. And you get guys like Assad Brown in early, you get Brody Barnhart in early, and then like this weekend you bring in Santana Wilson, who he hasn't even visited campus yet, but I know for a fact that NC State is a strong contender in his recruitment. And his father has spoken really highly of NC State to him from everything that I've heard from Santana. So it's very encouraging right now. And we haven't even mentioned, I don't believe, Andre Evans, who NC State might be in the best spot out of any of the uncommitted defensive backs. So really looking forward to Javon Bailey too. He visited this week. I actually just posted some intel on how that visit went. I heard from a few sources about that. So go check out the Wolves Den message board for the latest on him. But it could be another special defensive back class. And while the ratings for Barnhart and Brown might not jump off the page right now, I will also encourage the fact that it's April, long way. Those rankings can change quite a bit. So don't get too hung up on the rankings right now. Use it more. It's just a guiding tool. And then also look at those offer lists because, man, the offer list for the a guy like Javon Bailey, who I believe is rated an 85 by On3, but again, he's another guy. It's a Florida State, Miami, like all sorts of great offers. So
I believe
very promising.
I believe he had an official visit lined up with Miami, right? Or am I confusing? No, that's the offensive lineman, Derek.
Well, I heard today actually that he's in the process of lining up other official visits, and he has previously told me that Miami will be a school that will receive an official visit along with Florida State. But his only official visit locked in right now is with the Wolfpack.
Also, Jameer Grimsley from Tampa took a visit to NC State. You wrote about him this week. So, I mean, he's a high-level 3-star safety with a very impressive offer list. I know Penn State, one of the schools that seems to be prioritizing him. Mm-hmm. We didn't even mention him. That just shows you how good the DB board looks right now. Real quick, Santana Wilson, Adrian Wilson's son. The On3 industry rankings was kind of combined. All 4 of the major service rankings has him at number 253 in the country. So you're talking about a borderline top 250 prospect and the number 21 corner in the country.
And On3 has him number 90 in the country and the number 10 corner in the nation too.
Yeah.
So On3s are really high on this kid.
I feel like we talked about wide receiver board pretty healthy. I feel like there's just a lot of competition on that wide receiver board, and I think probably got to be a little patient to see how it plays out. But what position group would you say on the other end of the spectrum? This is a position group where I'm curious to see where it's going to go from now to, say, end of summer. Like last year, for instance, I would say linebacker was a good group to put that in. Because,
definitely.
Other than Stanquan Clark during the middle of the summer, it wasn't clear who they were going to target at linebacker. And then when Stanquan Clark picked Louisville, did he end up signing with Louisville? I can't remember.
He did.
Okay. I remember he floated with Flippin. Mm-hmm. And so we didn't know where NC State were going to go at linebacker at the end of the summer. And then they went out, offered some players, including Kelvin McBride and Kamal Bonner, who both ended up signing with NC State. Then Rohan Davey, an old target who picked Cincinnati, and then a coaching change with the Bearcats. He flipped to NC State. So what position group would you say is kind of like that right now? Well, you're really curious to see how is this position board going to unfold over the next couple months?
For me, it's very clearly the defensive line. They have some top targets, but other than that, there's a lot of question marks. And I was asking around about it pretty recently, and I was told by a source that keep an eye out for that board to expand during the upcoming evaluation period. I think we could kind of see it kind of get retooled. They just offered a defensive lineman. His name's escaping me right now, but he was committed to Wake Forest, decommitted earlier this week, and got a ton of offers, including NC State.
From Georgia, right?
Yes.
You talk, and I'll pull him up. JT Terrell from Rome, Georgia.
Yeah, so he's a good player. He's another Georgia guy. NC State's doing a great job recruiting Georgia so far this cycle. So we'll see maybe if that turns into a if there's anything there going forward. But there's the top guy at that board is probably Amaris Williams, who he's visited plenty of times before. Those visits have gone well from everything I've heard from him and others. But I think Tennessee and UNC are going to be very, very stiff competition there from what I've heard. So I could see NC State really kind of flipping around their defensive line board going forward. Kendall Howard's another guy. He's from Virginia. The guy that NC State had on campus and offered pretty recently. But I don't know if I can see him joining the class super soon. And I know Virginia Tech's also a strong contender there. So it's going to be a position group to watch. Offensive line's another group that to keep an eye on just because there's a lot of uncertainty there. Kind of almost the inverse of what we were looking at this time last year, if you think about it.
Yeah, and it's quite frankly, last year I think the defensive line board didn't break down quite as they had hoped. They did get Isaiah Shirley, but they ended up having to go junior college and transfer portal to fill out the depth. So that just illustrates there's a lot of fluidity when it comes to recruiting. It changes a lot. We're talking about 16, 17, 18-year-old young men who what they think one day are going to change the next. And it's not a lot of big picture planning. It's really a lot about feel, and how you feel changes a lot when it comes to recruiting. And that's why you're dealing with a lot of ups and downs and twists and turns, because what felt good in April may not feel as good in June. And sometimes you have a situation who the young man, Sam Pendleton, last year. He went to NC State a lot, even as a kid growing up, because that was his school, and he had family members who liked NC State, went to football games at NC State. And then Notre Dame offers, and he takes a visit to South Bend, and he had already kind of made up his mind he was going to make a decision in April, and South Bend was fresh, it was new, it was exciting. He felt good there, and he ended up picking Notre Dame. He enrolled early at Notre Dame. So that's kind of what you deal with when you got with recruiting and young men, and that's natural. That's the way it's supposed to be. So, all right, let's hear it. Over and under as we wrap up this podcast. I want to know, before camp season, when's the first football camp? Do you remember?
I think it's that first week of June. It's somewhere in there. I can't remember the exact date though.
Yeah,
something like that.
All right, before the first camp, and before those official visits starts flying in June, and NC State already has at least 4 lined up, and we think there's a 5th lined up as well. They just haven't confirmed with the young man himself that he's actually coming. But his teammate has said he will be officially visiting in June. Before all that starts happening, what would you put your over and under? You put the line. You're the bookmaker here on how many commitments NC State will have by the time that happens. How many more commitments NC State will gain by the time that happens?
I think I'd put it right at 2. And then if I was a betting man, I'd probably take the push on that. I know there's a couple guys that are looking at potential late April, early May decisions. I know one guy to keep an eye on. I don't know I know he's taking a couple visits out west later in this month, but Jaden Scott, the running back, he has previously said he would like to make a decision in May. We'll see how that works out with him. And I'm thinking, just the way things are trending, I think NC State could continue to make up some good ground on this spring game weekend. I think maybe we could see some more good news come. That's not sourced at all. I haven't heard any commits looming coming into the weekend, but just the way things have been trending, NC State's been doing a pretty good job about pulling off a commitment per visit weekend so far this spring. And this spring game weekend is the biggest of them yet. So I'll put it right at 2. I think most kids at this point, it's either you decide in early mid-April or you are probably waiting to take a couple official visits. So it'll be a little quieter than it was the past couple weeks, but I think a couple more guys could end up joining the class. Guys worth getting excited about too.
So you put the over. Most people put over under 0.5. So would you put it at 1.5 or 2.5?
I'll put it at 1.5 then.
1.5. All right. Good to know. Also, basketball recruiting, I'm going to put that same number for this weekend as a bold prediction. So it's a big weekend for the transfer portal because you start shifting your attention from who's going into the portal. Now the attention shifts to where are guys visiting.
Mm-hmm.
And NC State has 2 on campus as we speak, or it's supposed to be on campus as we speak. And they may have some more coming in after the dead period ends this week. So the next couple of weeks in basketball recruiting for the transfer portal will tell us a lot about how the roster will look for next season. There's still guys entering the portal as we speak. I was kind of surprised. I was all about to hop on the Creighton bandwagon for next season, but then Nembhard jumps into the portal. It goes to show you. I think he was a freshman, wasn't he? I can't remember, but I felt like he was like a freshman, and he's averaging like starting and playing 35 minutes a game on a top 10 team. It goes to show you it's wild. You can't bank on anybody coming back until that portal actually closes on you. So, been crazy, and it would not surprise me if NC State ends up with 4 or 5 basketball transfer portal additions before it's all over with. So,
and if you're enjoying the basketball transfer portal talk, get ready, because in 9 days we have football transfer portal part 2 coming. Yeah. So we'll see how that happens. The portal opens April 15th, so that'll be exciting to watch too.
I wouldn't surprise me. We know NC State has offered a receiver from Division II. It wouldn't surprise me if NC State obviously trying to find 1 or 2 guys. It's my theory. I feel like this window is going to be I don't know what the right way to describe it. Like, I don't want to put down anybody, but maybe not as plentiful or not as shopper friendly, I guess. But I feel like what you're going to get out of the spring are the guys who realize, you know what, my playing time here is blocked. And so I got to go somewhere else to find more playing time versus guys in December who are looking for whatever reason to move on. So that's my
I think
theory.
There'll be a lot of that, or guys that maybe they spend a few months with a new coaching staff and they're like, man, it's just not a good fit. And then they hop in the portal. But yeah, I think that's probably the main people who identify that they're going to be sitting on the bench more than they'd like in the fall.
Yeah. And that's where if you're looking for impact guys, I just don't know if they're going to be quite as many coming out of this transfer portal, but it will be interesting to see, for instance, who from NC State may be deciding to hop into the portal. So lots to come. Ethan, I appreciate you. You can catch all of his work on the wolfpacker.com. Reminders for you as we wrap this up. Please rate and review this podcast wherever you may listen to your podcast. Give us a thumbs up, a like, a comment, wherever. You can follow us on YouTube. You can follow us on Twitter. You can follow us on Facebook. You can follow us on Instagram. It's all the Wolfpacker. You can follow Ethan on Twitter, Ethan M. McDowell, all one word, no underscore, no hyphen, no nothing. Just Ethan M. McDowell. Follow him on Twitter. If you can't remember that, follow the Wolfpacker and see his tweets. They're all over the place. And then follow him from there. Remember, a lot of information we've given you. If you liked it, sign up to the website. You get 4 months for $10 right now. It's a great deal. Take advantage of it. And then last but not least, RogueShop.com. Please help them out. Support them. They're great sponsors for the Wolfpacker.com. RogueShop.com. That's ROG as in girl, UESHOP. I spelled it right this time. .com. All your natural cannabis needs. They're legal. They're safe products. They might be able to help you out. So if you've been dealing with anxiety or chronic pain or sleep deprivation, and you just want to try something and see if it might help you, give them a shot. It's a husband and wife outfit. It has helped the husband out. He's a disabled veteran. He knows it can work for him, and he might be able to work for you. And they'll be willing to talk to you, help you out, point you in the right direction, what products you might want or need or should try. They have a live chat feature on their website. They are also on a message board if you need to see them. So I think that'll do it for this edition of the Wolfpacker Show. I'm Matt Carter. Ethan, thanks for joining us, and we'll catch you next time after the spring game. We'll be breaking it down. What we saw, probably a lot of wet, rainy. It could be interesting to see what happens on Saturday. But we'll talk about it. Rain or shine, we're going to talk about it. So this has been the latest episode of the Wolfpacker Show.